today we do have the best experts to tell us about that, because these are the men and one woman who were in Cuba during a 25-year span of Republican and Democratic administrations, and are all career officers. But before I turn it over to them, I'd like to tell you a little story about my experience in Cuba. Toward the end of my tour in Cuba, I was driving the principal officer's car, and by the way, in Cuba, they often call us the chief of the United States intersection, and they call the intersection USINT. So the chief of the USINT, which is us, and in this case myself, I was driving this beautiful black Crown Victoria that's often driven by the chauffeur for the principal officer. But in this case, it was a sultry Saturday afternoon, and I decided that I'd go in to work at USINT. And USINT, by the way, is our old embassy, as most of you here know, and it was renovated in the mid-90s when Alan Flanagan was there. And as I drove down toward the intersection on Quinta Avenida, which is the most beautiful avenue in Havana, it goes through the old residential section, beautiful trees and old mansions. Lots of people, as usual, were along the road trying to get a ride. And I saw this group of kids, and I stopped. And these kids, they just jumped in the car. There must have been 6 or 7 of them. And they kind of leaned back in the air conditioning, because no cars in Cuba are air conditioned. Even the little Ladas used by the Cuban hierarchy are not air conditioned. And the cars that the Cubans usually ride in are the old 50 clunkers, which we think are very romantic, from Detroit. Anyway, one of the kids said, "Where did you get this car?" And I said, "Oh, well, this car is the property of the United States government." And someone said, "And what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm the chief of USINT." And there was a pregnant pause there for a minute, and then this girl leaned over from the back seat and she said, "Be our mother, take us to Miami." Well, I think the reason that all of us are here this morning is because we would like to see a future for Cuba's young people, for those young people, not in Miami, but in Havana, Cuba. And I think we all think that this relationship that we have with Cuba, if it were the right one, might be able to influence positively that outcome.